Before starting this talk, I want to assure you that it has been checked by the theologian in the family, and I have been assured that I am not committing heresy in what I say to you today. Whether it might be the word of the Lord or not will be open to your interpretation. Thank you for allowing me to take on this task while my wife is in New York playing grandmother, much to her delight. The sermon today centers around the Old Testament lesson, and particularly these words. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. As a youngster growing up in northeastern Pennsylvania, we were blessed with a good-sized Jewish community, enough so that there were a couple of Orthodox synagogues, a very distinguished conservative synagogue, and a massive Reform congregation in the suburb of Kingston. The Reform congregation had a very large building, reflective of its time of construction, the early 1960s. It was a long building with a facade which was more narrow and shaped something like a book or perhaps a scroll, made of cast concrete. In one corner of the facade was a magnificent contemporary art version of a menorah. And on the other side, in both Hebrew and English, simply the words, act justly, love mercy, walk humbly with God. It was a dramatic presentation of a biblical passage known to all of us, and yet rarely do we seriously consider the answer to this basic question. What in the world does God want from us? What is our place in the universe and our ultimate purpose? While I don't think I can answer that monumental question in a short text, I do think we can consider the question on a level more down to earth and practical. In this latter part of the first quarter of the 21st century, what does God want from us here at the corner of Moss Avenue and Malvern Lane? The plague, COVID-19 in vernacular terms, has certainly put us at a place of asking this basic question about where to direct our ministry, our time, our talent, and energy. In light of this world-changing event from which we are still recovering, or perhaps more accurately, seeing it through to its end, what are the implications for ministry in this unique time? In thinking about this question, I'm reminded of the words of my beloved colleague in ministry and your pastor's spiritual mentor, the Reverend Richard D. Adams at Pine Street Church in Harrisburg. Dick would constantly remind us, God asks us to be faithful, not successful. That is a concept that runs counter to the general culture for sure. Money, position, and rank in life seem so important. My church isn't as large as it used to be. We're failing. Our church isn't as influential as it once was when every executive from Caterpillar seemed to be on the rolls. How did we fail? But I suggest to you that we do not fail just because of numbers. We fail when we lose sight of God's will for our ministry. Or even worse, don't bother to ask the Almighty what the divine will is. We just blindly do what we've always done, and it doesn't feel right, but we don't know what else to do. It is not an unusual feeling in mainline churches these days. Gone are the times when it was part of a successful person's life to belong to a prestigious church. It was expected of you. But as that part of the social contract fell away during the 1960s and 70s, we whittled the church down a bit, perhaps a lot, to a group of people who want to be here and come as we do because it is the very heart of our lives. It centers us, gives life meaning and joy, and helps us understand the incomprehensibility of life. So, we're here because we are the remnant, if you will, of the once mighty mainline churches of America. But now that we are, as the Scots say, a wee kirk, what can we do? I believe the answer is a lot. But we can't do a lot without taking the first steps to bring our fellowship into line with God's will. Let's be honest, COVID tore us apart. For almost a year, we worshiped online. We each sat in our den or kitchen and watched the service on our computer. Thank God we live in a time of computers and the magic they bring to our lives. We were able to keep in touch, hold on to one another through those online services, and we were able to keep our weekly Bible study going, having session meetings all online. And now that begins to be comfortable, sitting in our very own easy chair, worshiping God together. Well, okay, it was good when it was needed, but the church is more than a bunch of people online together. That sort of defines Facebook, doesn't it? We keep in touch, but just barely. Over the centuries, the church has realized that we are a people that need to come together in community regularly to worship, but to be human too, to feel the flesh and blood of our neighbor in the pew, to share in person the joys and sorrows of life, to encourage one another and to encourage one another in a way a Hallmark greeting can't, to show our lives in community. And I would propose to you that the first thing the Lord requires of us is to reestablish that community. The plague has become less severe, and with some precautions, we can worship together without killing one another. And a lot of us have done this. We have come back to our sanctuary and ever so hesitantly started to reestablish our community. If you counted up all the folks who've been here in the past year or so, it would be a goodly part of our fellowship. But it is time to step out on faith, take the chance that God will be faithful and bless us with good health, in spite of the challenges, and come back and fill this room. Oh, I know, it's never quite full, maybe on Easter and Christmas. But we do need to pull ourselves out of our comfortable easy chairs in our den or living room and make once again ourselves comfortable in these pews, in the choir loft, in the parlor for coffee. This is the first step, but an important one. Reestablishing our sense of community is the first piece of the journey. When we can fully share our fellowship, we become more open to God's will for us. We will start to search for new ways to push forward and make our presence known in this community and in the world. We don't have to be successful in the ways of the world. We do not need to be involved but we do need to be involved so God can speak to us. We have ministries that need tending. Until the situation was mentioned in a sermon a while ago, the Westmark Pantry was becoming the Mark Pantry. Thankfully, several of our members have taken on this challenge and deserve our gratitude for helping to keep this ministry vital and a part of our congregation, not just a part of our building. We have also had some members who've been ill and need special care, and again, a number of folks have committed themselves to this task. But we do have some able people who can give the time. This is very promising. We also need to reestablish some of our fellowship in breaking bread together. Those wonderful lunches after church helped keep us in community. Some new folk need to step forward and help with that. No longer are we cooking the meals in-house, so all you have to do is be able to set the table. And we need to start inviting our friends and relatives and whomever we can think of that might become a part of our fellowship. We are fairly successful in bringing a new member in if that person gets through the door the first time. But that's always the problem, and we need to take it seriously and work at it. So the question becomes, how do I discern what God requires of me? The answer is simple, and yet another biblical text: seek and ye shall find. I can give you an example of this. Actually, I could give you several examples of our church members stepping up to the plate, making a difference, which I have mentioned just a moment ago. But I will pick one special example because of the dynamic difference it has made for us during this time. That example would be Elder Larry Hicks. The Sunday after COVID shut us down, Larry was in this sanctuary with Denise and me, just the three of us, to broadcast our service over his telephone. In the intervening months, he has built for us a first-class system with which we can broadcast our services live every Sunday morning and also post it on YouTube. I don't believe he's missed more than one or two services since all this began. His faithful dedication to our webcast has put us in a position where we reach more people now than we did when we were all sitting in the pews just before COVID. We have a steady group of people who tune in every week to participate here, one I know from as far away as Virginia. Without Larry, this would not have been possible, or at least it would not have been as flawless and done with such dedication by someone who just did it for the money. It may not have been a conscious action, but in the time of need, Larry asked what the Lord required, and he stepped up to the plate and did it. While our answers may not be as clear to discern, they are there if we ask the right questions and are willing to respond. We may not be able to do something physical, but become partners in prayer for our congregation. Others may be able to help through significant donations of funds to help replenish some of the endowment that has had to be spent during this time. Westminster is the closest Presbyterian church to the central city as it gets. Others who used to consider us suburban out here on Moss Avenue are now out in the current suburbs, abandoning old ministries downtown for easier ones in the affluent suburbs. But when Westminster burned back in 1986, the choice was to be here, to take the job of witness of the mainline church to the center city and less fortunate areas of the city that abut our property. We are in a place of real opportunity for ministry, but will we take it? Will we find a way to continue to bring people into our fellowship who also care about ministry, who need to find out? We need to pray and argue and discuss and come to agreements on what we might do to make this a powerhouse of a wee kirk. Westminster stands as a progressive bastion of faith in an area in which churches are more likely to wish us back into the 1950s or give us some religious entertainment rather than witnessing to the power of the living God in worship that reminds us that we are in the world but not of the world. The positive witness of this church to the love of God and his journey with us since the days of Abraham is an important one in this city. We need to remember that. The opportunity is here. We are in the right place to do what churches are called to do. Will we do it? We can hope so. No, we're not all too old. There are things for each of us to do to make these visions of the future come to pass. but we must give of ourselves and rededicate this ministry to doing what it can, where it can, and be a force to be reckoned with in speaking out for the love of God and Jesus Christ in this city. What does the Lord require of us? Let's try to find out and then make it so. The word of the Lord, I hope.